Welcome to The Explainer. You know, as a mental health professional, I'm literally always on the lookout for resources that manage to perfectly bridge that gap between rigid clinical theory and real, raw, lived experience. And the source material we're looking at today, from a channel called Forged from the Ashes, which is dedicated to recovery, mental health, and sobriety, offers an absolutely incredible case study. We're going to break down their content today so we can really understand the true psychological mechanics of both addiction and recovery. Okay, let's dive right into this by asking the fundamental clinical question that sits at the very heart of psychological struggle and addiction. Why exactly does the human mind turn on itself? When we analyze the stories produced by Forged from the Ashes, we aren't just looking at a series of random unfortunate events. We are observing the brain's baseline survival mechanisms completely malfunctioning. What we're really seeing is a mind that has been biologically and psychologically hijacked. Think of this as our therapeutic roadmap for today's session. We're going to cover recognizing the addiction problem, the psychology of not quitting, the reality of rock bottom, addiction's cognitive distortions, and finally, healing through creative expression. All right, starting with Section 1, recognizing the addiction problem. This is all about that absolutely critical first step of self-awareness. You see, addiction almost never happens overnight, right? It's actually a progressive narrowing of the things that bring a person joy. Day one might just bring this fleeting, tiny realization, but months in, it becomes a sustained inability to just break the habit. And that eventually culminates, years later, in a severe rock-bottom crisis. It's a chronological progression that completely reshapes a patient's reality from the inside out. In their source material titled, "The First Time I Knew I Had a Problem," the creator experiences a massive psychological breakthrough. From a mental health perspective, we actually call this an ego-dystonic realization. It's that powerful, striking moment where a person realizes their behavior no longer aligns with their core values. And honestly, without this initial spark of awareness, behavioral change is practically impossible. It's the very foundation of recovery. Moving right along to Section 2, the psychology of not quitting, let's unpack the real struggle to actually stop. Society loves to push this myth that quitting is just a simple choice, like it's a mere matter of willpower, right? Well, actually, the clinical reality we see explored here is so much more profound. Chronic substance use physically alters the brain's reward circuitry. The prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for logical decision-making and impulse control, is essentially taken offline. The mind genuinely turns on itself, hijacking the very mechanics of choice. The channel perfectly visualizes this immense struggle like a roller coaster. And clinically speaking, that hits the nail on the head. This maps exactly to the binge and intoxication stage, the withdrawal and negative affect stage, and finally the preoccupation and anticipation stage. It is just an exhausting loop. The patient is trapped in a compulsive return, not necessarily to feel that initial high anymore, but simply to stop feeling the chemically induced misery of the crash.
Which brings us to Section 3, the reality of rock bottom. This is, without a doubt, the darkest phase of the timeline.
As a mental health professional, I really need to emphasize something here. Hitting rock bottom is absolutely not a moral failing. It is a severe clinical presentation. The source material dedicated an incredible, in-depth look at what rock bottom actually looks like. In treatment, we see rock bottom not just as a singular bad day, but as the exact moment the scale permanently tips. It's the moment where the crushing cost of the addiction finally and undeniably outweighs the perceived benefit of the substance. It's a terrifying place for sure, but psychologically, it provides the exact leverage required to shatter a patient's denial.
Let's pivot to Section 4, Addiction's Cognitive Distortions. We're going to look at the powerful lies the mind tells itself.
So why on earth does the brain lie to itself? Well, it's doing it to protect the addiction at all costs. The lies addiction tells you is another phenomenal concept from the channel, representing a deeply well-documented clinical phenomenon. These lies are cognitive distortions. It's the brain rationalizing, saying things like, "Oh, I only use under stress," or "I can totally stop tomorrow." The addiction creates an impenetrable firewall of psychological defenses, denial, projection, rationalization, making the person believe their destructive behavior is completely normal. When your mind turns on you, just think about the profound weight of that statement for a second. From a mental health viewpoint, this is the absolute tragedy of the condition. The very organ you rely on to solve problems, your mind, becomes the primary source of the problem. Your survival instincts are entirely rewired. Your brain is essentially tricked into believing that the substance, not food, not water, not human connection, is the single most vital thing required for your very existence.
Finally, we reach Section 5, Healing Through Creative Expression. This is the constructive, hopeful path toward recovery.
To overcome these massive psychological obstacles, the channel passionately highlights the transformative power of art and music. In clinical practice, we know for a fact that replacing a destructive habit requires finding healthy, dopaminergic alternatives. Whether it's picking up a guitar to channel severe anxiety into a melody or holding a paintbrush to process complex trauma, these outlets allow patients to express emotions without relying solely on words. They foster connection, inspiration, and community, and those are the true antidotes to the crushing isolation of addiction.
The very name Forged from the Ashes speaks directly to this beautiful clinical concept called post-traumatic growth. In therapy, we don't just want patients to return to their baseline. We want them to forge a new, stronger, way more self-aware identity from the remnants of their past struggles. The fire of addiction is destructive. Absolutely, it burns everything down. But what comes out of those ashes can be incredibly powerful, resilient, and deeply vibrant.
So I really want to leave you with this provocative thought to reflect on today. How will you find hope and strength in your own psychological healing journey? Understanding the mechanics of addiction is the critical first step toward lasting recovery. Whether you're navigating these rough waters yourself, maybe supporting a loved one, or just simply seeking to understand the human condition better, always remember this. The mind that can turn on itself also possesses the miraculous, built-in capacity to heal itself. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep growing, and I will see you next time.